Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I will talk about the homeowners association that is demanding access to my house and yard. Picture this. You're finishing up a Thursday night pizza when an unknown number lights up your phone. Hello, this is Byron with the Ridgeview Heights Homeowners Association. We're calling to arrange pickup of the master keys to the cabin you've been occupying. Per last month's vote, your lot is now a designated common amenity. Please have the keys ready by Monday at 8. I thought it was a prank. My cabin sits halfway up a mountain on 45 acres of deeded timberland I inherited from my great-uncle. It's 3 miles from the nearest paved road and 10 from the new upscale subdivision sprouting near the valley floor. There isn't and never has been an HOA within shouting distance. So I laughed. Funny joke, but you've got the wrong person. Byron's tone turned clipped. We're not joking, sir. Your parcel falls inside our newly recorded gate-to-gate expansion plat. The membership has already ratified the change, and we require immediate access. Non-compliance will result in fines. Then he hung up. My slice of pizza cooled while I stared at the phone. I pulled up my county's property viewer. Same boundaries as always. Timber lot 12, 45.37 acres. Fee simple absolute. Owner, me. No encumbrances except a century-old forestry easement that nobody has used since loggers hauled trees with mules. At first I figured some overzealous HOA board had miscopied a parcel number and would back off as soon as they saw the map. Still, I emailed a polite "you're mistaken" note that night, attaching screenshots of the deed and survey. I never heard back. 3 days later, on my regular weekend drive up the mountain road, I rounded the bend by the old stone quarry and slammed the brakes. Someone had bolted a steel gate across the public right-of-way. Fresh wooden sign. Private Ridgeview Heights HOA members only. Trespassers will be prosecuted. The mountain road is county-maintained, public by statute, so I carry bolt cutters in case fallen branches jam something shut. Snip, snip, chain gone. I swung the gate aside, eased my pickup through, and relatched it behind me out of courtesy. A quarter-mile later, I spotted another sign planted in my own driveway. Future Community Meadow, under HOA management. My name was nowhere. Rage bubbled. Halfway up my lane, a golf cart blocked the path. A woman wearing a puffy vest and holding a clipboard flagged me down. "State your name and unit number," she barked. "My name is Kane, and this is private property," I answered. She scowled. "You're not on the approved entry list. Turn around." When I stepped out and walked toward my cabin, she snapped photos and radioed someone about an intruder refusing to comply. I ignored her, unlocked my own front door, and started a fire in the wood stove. 10 minutes later, a deputy cruiser rolled up. Deputy Martell I recognized. He'd helped me jumpstart the pickup last winter. I waved him inside and handed over my deed, survey, and the letter from my great-uncle's estate. He radioed dispatch, stepped back onto the porch with the clipboard lady, and in plain earshot said, "Ma'am, this cabin is on Lot 12, privately owned since 1954. The county road stays public until the last hairpin. You have no authority here." Clipboard lady sputtered that their attorney had assured them the entire ridgeline fell within their new gate-to-gate annex. Martell told her any further obstruction would count as criminal trespass. She drove off, tires flinging gravel. I poured Martell a mug of coffee. We chatted about trout streams until he got another call. Before leaving, he advised me to document everything. Sounds like they filed something at the recorder's office. Check Monday and install cameras. These folks get pushy. Sunday at dawn, I hiked my property line with orange survey tape and a GoPro strapped to my chest. Sure enough, bright blue stakes with RHHOA hammered into my soil every 100 yards. Whole crews had trampled saplings, leveling spots for picnic tables that didn't belong to them. At the northern meadow, I found a padlocked shed stuffed with folding chairs and portable fire pits. HOA logo stenciled on the door. I took photos, cut their padlock, and hauled the gear onto county land at the foot of my drive. Let them retrieve it legally. Then I posted private property, no easement granted signs along each boundary. That night I drafted a timeline. 1. Verify filings. 2. Demand cease and desist. 3. If they push, sue for quiet title, trespass, and damages. I'm no lawyer, but my college roommate River now runs a property law firm 2 states away. I slid the photos into a shared drive and called River, who promised to look up the plat first thing Monday. Monday afternoon, River texted, "You've been plat-jacked." HOA filed a supplemental annexation map, claiming an unbroken rectangle from the subdivision up to the ridge, totaling nearly 900 acres. and recorded it without owner consents. Clerk just rubber-stamped it. Apparently, the board argued that an old cart path created an implied covenant tying every parcel uphill into a single resort corridor. The clerk, overloaded and undertrained, accepted the paperwork. Thus, on county records, my cabin suddenly sat inside a homeowners association I had never heard of. It was bogus, but it existed until challenged. I fired off a certified letter to the board president demanding immediate removal of all gates and signage, restoration of property, and written acknowledgement of my sole ownership. I gave them 72 hours before I filed suit. Their response arrived the next morning by courier. A notice of fine, $500 per day for unauthorized use of HOA recreational facility. They also assessed me a prorated share of the gate installation and community meadow beautification, $11,842, payment due in 10 days. They enclosed an entry code for the Valley Gate that I had snipped, adding that tampering with HOA infrastructure could lead to lien foreclosure. My hands shook, not from fear but from the pure audacity. They intended to bury me in paperwork until I capitulated. What they didn't know, I work remotely for a cybersecurity outfit and have flexible hours plus an appetite for principled battles. First move, hire local counsel. River recommended Maribel, a bulldog litigator who loved boundary disputes. Maribel reviewed my pile of evidence and grinned like she'd found buried treasure. They opened the door to punitive damages. Let's kick it in. We filed a complaint for quiet title, injunctive relief, trespass, conversion for seizing my driveway, and nuisance. We requested a temporary restraining order forcing removal of gates and signs pending final judgment. The judge scheduled a hearing 2 weeks out. Meanwhile, I installed trail cams on every tree facing the road, patched them into a solar charger, and routed the feeds to my phone. The first night, I caught 2 HOA board members yanking down my private property signs and hammering theirs back up. That video went straight to Maribel. Saturday came, and so did 3 SUVs packed with board members and what looked like prospective buyers. They drove right past my new no trespassing plaque and started pointing out view lots, with my living room as the scenic backdrop. I stepped onto the porch, phone raised, announcing I was recording live. They scattered like squirrels. Clipboard lady, whose name I learned was Ember, called from the road to threaten another fine. I told her we were past fines. She could address her concerns to the court. Then I ordered a second padlock, engraved "Property of Cain, cut this and smile for the camera." That evening, a friend in the county assessor's office tipped me off. The HOA had petitioned to have my property reclassified as common open space, which would slash my tax rate but also strip my development rights. Sneaky. I filed an objection immediately. Every day brought a new scheme, noise complaints alleging raucous parties. I live alone, mostly talk to squirrels. Code complaints claiming my cabin lacked a permit, built before permits existed. Fake environmental concerns over my wood stove, each required a response. I was burning PTO just to keep up. River suggested turning the tables with something HOAs fear, a title insurer. I forwarded the dispute to my insurer, who realized any cloud on my deed endangered their underwriting. They assigned counsel and investigative clout, doubling the legal pressure on Ridgeview Heights. A week before the injunction hearing, Maribel deposed Ember and Byron. Under oath, both insisted every lot uphill had signed annexation paperwork. Maribel slid my signed affidavit denying such consent. Ember stammered that someone must have forged my signature. That slip made the court reporter's eyebrows climb. Late that same night, my driveway cameras pinged. 2 figures in hoodies appeared, spraying black paint over my trail cam lenses. What they didn't know, I'd sheltered a backup lens inside the porch light. Perfect shots of Ember and a bored treasurer smashing my mailbox. Deputies picked them up at their homes before sunrise. The next morning, my phone exploded with texts from neighbors downhill. Folks who actually liked the new HOA perks, but suddenly realized their fees might bankroll criminal vandalism. Rumor had it a recall petition against the board was already circulating. By the time the injunction hearing arrived, the courthouse gallery was packed. I spotted Ember across the aisle, foundation powder failing to cover a bruise on her ego. Byron clutched a tube of rolled blueprints like a lifeline. Maribel opened with video stills of their gate, their shed on my land, and the trail cam vandalism. She followed with plat maps, expert affidavits, and the gem, Ember's deposition admitting possible forgery. The judge granted our restraining order on the spot, ordered immediate removal of gates, prohibited further contact, and set a trial date for damages. We walked out into the hallway, buzzing with reporters. Maribel advised no comments. I, however, smiled and quoted the judge's own words. "Private property shall remain private." It hit the evening news. Unwanted fame, but effective deterrent. Back at the cabin that weekend, I chainsawed the HOA signage still littering my meadow, stacked it into neat bundles, and mailed the scraps cod to Ember's listed address. FedEx receipt confirmed she signed for the splintered remains. My little bit of symbolic satisfaction. Less than a month had passed since that bizarre phone call, yet my normal mountain solitude felt a lifetime away. I still had the bigger battle, trial, damages, maybe criminal charges to face, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I slept soundly with the windows cracked, listening to wind through pines instead of tires on gravel. I woke up to the scent of juniper and knew the war wasn't over, but the first skirmish was mine, and I had plenty of surprises left in reserve for anyone who doubted a determined owner protecting what was rightfully his. If you've ever tried to work a normal Zoom shift while the county sheriff calls you every hour, you'll understand the circus my life turned into after the injunction. The board had 48 hours to yank every trace of their empire off my land. Instead of quietly complying, they doubled down, in ways I couldn't invent on my worst insomnia night. The first curveball arrived Tuesday at dawn. My driveway alarm pinged, and through the kitchen window, I spotted a convoy of flatbed trucks rumbling up the switchbacks. They bore the livery of an outfit called Pinnacle Peaks Film Studio. The lead driver hopped out and waved a location permit placard like a flag. Evidently, Ridgeview Heights had leased their scenic meadow, my meadow, to shoot a commercial for high-end patio furniture. I marched out in boots and flannel, video rolling. "Turn those rigs around," I told the foreman, a guy named Lyle who looked more confused than hostile. "But our producer has a signed location agreement with the Homeowners Association," he protested, waving a carbon copy contract. "That piece of paper is counterfeit property authority," I said. "I own the soil under your tires." He eyed my GoPro. "Are we going to end up on one of those viral confrontation reels?" "Not if you leave in the next 5 minutes," I promised. "Otherwise, you'll star as Evidence Exhibit G." Lyle studied the contract again, realized he'd been suckered, and ordered his drivers to back down the mountain. One truck clipped a sapling on the switchback, snapping it clean. I snapped photos for damages. By 10 a.m., Maribel had fired off a new motion. Emergency contempt of court for the HOA's blatant violation of the restraining order. She added the name of the film studio as an unwitting co-conspirator, just to keep things spicy. The clerk set a hearing for Friday. Plotline 2, Insurance Muscle Flexes. My title insurer's investigator, a droll fellow named Marcus, showed up with a drone fleet and a portable GIS station. He wanted aerial imagery to quantify every tree, rock, and fence post the HOA had disturbed. We spent the afternoon mapping ruts, counting stumps, and tagging fresh rebar stakes hidden under brush. Marcus whistled when the survey drew itself on his tablet. "They grabbed more than your 45 acres, he said. "Looks like they sank money into trail work clear to the western ridge. Somebody's cash flow projection just hit a wall." Marcus's report went straight to the insurer's subrogation team, who promptly filed their own suit for fraud. That made 3 active lawsuits ringing Ridgeview Heights like hounds around a cornered bear. Plotline 3, the anonymous whistleblower. Thursday evening, I got an email from a burner account, subject line, "Board using fake ballots. Check the storage unit in town." The body contained a keypad code and directions to a mini storage locker. Normally I'd flag that as bait, but I forwarded it to Deputy Martell, who called back an hour later. "We just executed a warrant," he said. "Found 2 printers, blank proxy forms, and a stack of pre-marked ballots. Your HOA's next election was rigged before it started." Friday's contempt hearing felt like round 2 of a heavyweight fight. Ember and Byron showed up flanked by a different attorney. Apparently their original counsel had resigned after the vandalism arrest. The judge played drone footage of trucks trespassing on the big courtroom monitor, then scrolled through Martell's affidavit about forged ballots. His gavel echoed like a rifle shot. "Miss Ember and Mr. Byron, effective immediately, you are barred from acting in any representative capacity for Ridgeview Heights. Sheriff's deputies will escort you from the premises if you attempt so much as a newsletter." As an additional kicker, the judge froze the HOA's bank accounts pending forensic review. Homeowners in the gallery gasped louder than at a fireworks finale. Without access to dues, their fancy pool project and gate maintenance evaporated in real time. I expected Ember to melt down, Instead, she stared at me with an icy calm that chilled the air. Revenge rarely stops at the courthouse steps, a fact I learned the hard way 2 nights later. Plotline 4, Sabotage under starlight, Sunday 2:13 a.m. My phone buzzed with a motion alert, someone prowling near the generator shed behind my cabin. I flipped open the live feed to see 2 figures, faces masked, but both wearing identical reflective running shoes, easy to spot in infrared. One poured liquid over the fuel tank while the other held a flare. I sprang from bed, grabbed the fire extinguisher, and hammered the panic button on my security system, which pings the sheriff and floods the yard with Klieg light intensity LEDs. The prowlers bolted downhill. Their flight path took them straight past Marcus's hidden drone, which had sat roosted atop a pine for days, quietly recording. Deputies scooped them up at the bottom of the access road within minutes. Guess who? Ember's teenage twin sons, Wyatt and Wade. Turns out the liquid was orange juice, juvenile intimidation, not arson. But the flare alone justified attempted property damage charges. Ember came to the station demanding release, only to be served with her own arrest warrant for contributing to delinquency of minors and violating the no-contact order. She'd driven them to the gate. Cameras caught her slapping a deputy's clipboard. Assaulting an officer earned her an extra felony count. While Ember cooled in county holding, Byron tried to rally remaining homeowners into a defense fund. Problem? Their accounts were still frozen. His bright idea was to slap emergency special assessments on every resident, $5,000 each due immediately. Folks who initially liked the Gates suddenly saw red. My phone buzzed with apologies and offers to testify on my behalf. Plotline 5, Cybersecurity Sting. I promised earlier my day job involves wrangling hackers. Time to put that skill set to nonprofit harassment. Byron used a free email listserv for HOA blasts. No SPF, DKIM, or even a strong password. A quick metadata scrape revealed he sent board documents through public Wi-Fi at a local coffee shop every Wednesday morning. I parked in the corner booth one Wednesday, sipping chai and capturing packets. Public disclaimer, I did nothing illegal. The Wi-Fi was open. I intercepted no private passwords. What I did collect were unencrypted PDFs containing architectural plans, bank ledgers, and SCORE, an Excel sheet labeled Investor Waterfall. Lines 17 through 42 mapped payouts to names I'd never heard, starting with Jade, developer, and ending with Wade College Fund. The scheme was bigger than forging a plat. It was a full cash-out plan. I phoned Maribel. She looped in the district attorney's white-collar crimes unit. 2 subpoenas later, we had bank transfer receipts showing HOA dues siphoned into a shell company called Blue Vista Amenities LLC, owned entirely by Byron. Plotline 6, the grand jury and the developer. Word of the subpoenas reached a local real estate mogul nicknamed Jade, short for Jardine apparently, who had bankrolled the HOA takeover to secure ridgetop view lots for a boutique eco-resort. Jade's lawyers petitioned for a restraining order against me, claiming my defamatory crusade threatened his business reputation. The judge laughed it out of chambers. Jade got a front row seat at the same grand jury table as Byron. The grand jury returned indictments on conspiracy, wire fraud, forged instruments, and money laundering. Byron was booked. Jade posted a 7-figure bond. Local news vans set up tents outside the courthouse. My cabin, once a hermit's haven, landed on the 6 o'clock segment 3 nights straight. Plotline 7, Community Redemption or Not. With Byron and Ember sidelined, remaining homeowners convened an emergency meeting in their clubhouse. They invited me to speak. Walking into that room of tense faces, I expected pitchforks. Instead, I saw fatigue. One gray-haired man, Silas, stood and said, "We were sold a lie. How do we fix this without lawyers draining us dry?" I responded, "First, dissolve the annexation map. Second, appoint an interim board that cooperates with investigators. Third, audit every contract and claw back what you can. I'm not here to ruin your neighborhood. I just want my solitude back." They voted to hire Maribel as independent counsel for the HOA itself, minus the crooked officers. Conflict of interest? Maribel drew firm walls. She represented the collective membership for cleanup, not the bad actors. She offered a reduced rate if they agreed to grant me a public thank you and fund tree replanting on the damaged sites. Motion passed unanimously. Plotline 8, the mediation gamble. Civil court calendars move slower than glacial melt, so a federal magistrate suggested mediation. We met in a downtown conference room. Me, Maribel, 2 newly elected board reps, Byron's insurance counsel, Byron attended via phone from jail, and Jade's legal team. Everybody expected fireworks. Maribel opened with aerial photos of stumps, truck ruts, and vandalized mailboxes projected on a giant screen. She summarized my claims: cost to restore native flora, lost peaceful enjoyment, security upgrades, punitive damages, total $970,000. Jade's lawyer scoffed. Our client merely provided capital and didn't direct day-to-day operations. Maribel clicked to the Excel waterfall. Line 26, she said. Jade's personal draw, $400K after the first 10 view lots sold. That's day-to-day enough for me. Jade's face twitched. After 6 hours of shuttle caucusing, we reached a framework. Sky-high settlement if they wanted to dodge trial. Final number, $775,000 payable to me and my insurer, plus full remediation of all environmental damage under county supervision, and a permanent recorded covenant that Ridgeview Heights would never again annex land without unanimous consent of affected owners. They also agreed to publicly disavow Byron and Ember. I could have pushed for more, but I cared less about money than precedent. The mediator drafted signatures. Byron's counsel signed on his behalf. Jade scrawled a reluctant autograph. I initialed the last page, feeling a weight lift I hadn't realized I'd carried for months. Plotline 9. Consequences land on the guilty. 3 weeks later, Byron pled out to avoid a jury. He got 4 years in a state facility, 10 years probation, and restitution orders that would probably follow him to the grave. Ember fought harder but lost at trial, receiving 18 months in county jail and mandatory counseling, plus a civil judgment for my damaged generator shed and a new mailbox. Jade's case went to federal court. Rumor says he's negotiating, but the U.S. attorney loves high-profile convictions. Wyatt and Wade ended up doing community service, painting over graffiti on Forest Service signs, irony thick as bark. Plotline 10. Rebuilding and reflecting. Spring returned. County crews removed the last bent steel gate. The meadow, once scarred by tire tracks, sprouted green again after volunteers spread wildflower seed. The interim HOA board sent me updates and gift baskets of local honey, trying to make amends. I accepted their gestures. No sense nurturing old grudges once the originals had been uprooted. One rainy afternoon, River visited. We stood on my porch, steam rising from mugs of cocoa, and watched a red-tailed hawk wheel over the ridge. You know, River mused, this saga will end up in a property law textbook. I chuckled. Fine by me, as long as it ends before the index. The insurance settlement allowed me to add a solar array, upgrade trail cams, and fund a scholarship at the county community college for students interested in land use law. Naming it after my great-uncle felt right. He'd believed stewardship mattered as much as ownership. Last week, Maribel forwarded the judge's final order. Quiet title confirmed. Permanent injunction against Ridgeview Heights or any successor entity stepping 1 inch over my boundary. Reading that line, I let out a laugh so loud the ravens scattered from the spruce tops. I still work remote shifts, but I've reclaimed my evenings for what counts. Hiking to the creek, sanding the old canoe, and sometimes just staring at the stars knowing nobody will show up with a clipboard claiming the Milky Way is now a shared amenity. If fate ever hands you a bogus fine or a forged plat, remember, documentation beats intimidation, and sometimes the little cabin on the mountain can hold its ground against the gated kingdom in the valley. 2 quiet seasons passed. Enough time for saplings to reclaim the ruts and for my porch rocking chair to find its perfect squeak again. When the next tremor rolled through the valley, it was a Thursday. Always a Thursday for some cosmic prank. And I was wrist-deep in a carburetor rebuild when the county clerk's envelope dropped into my mailbox. Inside, a notice of intent to condemn a 20-foot strip of my lower driveway for public roadway improvement in support of Economic Development District Project A1127. Condemnation? My jaw locked. Under American law, eminent domain can take private land, but only for bona fide public use with just compensation. Buried in the letter was the catch. The public in this case was Lumina Peaks Retreat, LLC, a shell company buying Jade's foreclosed ridge parcels at auction. They wanted a shuttle road, and the easiest path cut straight through my drive. I called Maribel. She whistled and said, "Different villains, same playbook, let's dig." While she filed a demand for full disclosure, I drove down to the county recorder to pull project hash A1127. The proposal glowed with buzzwords: wellness tourism, job creation, eco spa. But the source map overlaid the exact fraudulent annexation plat Byron had fabricated. Somebody had copied the forgery wholesale, color-changed the lines, and slapped a state grant logo on the cover. Cue déjà vu. I refused the surveyor's access, installed fresh cameras, and prepared for the next round. What I didn't expect was a knock at midnight 3 days later. Deputy Martel, helmet under his arm, eyes wide behind soot streaks. "Kane, we've got a brush fire 2 ridges west, winds shifting toward your timber. Voluntary evacuation. For now." I inhaled pine tar smoke on the breeze, grabbed my bug-out pack, and followed him down to the volunteer staging area. Watching orange tongues crawl the ridgeline, I realized the old illegal fuel breaks cut by Ridgeview's trail crews now formed a perfect fire line protecting my tree line, and, ironically, the subdivision below. As dawn pinked the sky, the Forest Service incident commander asked if we could run hose lays along my meadow road. On one condition, I said, document everything. Drones buzzed overhead, filming every burned stump, every limestone water bar. Irrefutable proof that the common meadow trails had served a public safety purpose that night, contradicting Lumina's claim the route was essential new infrastructure. If the road already functioned during a wildfire, how could the county justify condemning fresh land? Maribel loved the angle. She subpoenaed the incident footage and dropped it into our opposition brief to the Board of Supervisors. Public use? Already met by existing easementless access in emergencies. Economic necessity? Lumina could widen the old subdivision loop they already owned. My strip was a taking of convenience, not of need. Lumina responded by flooding the local airwaves with feel-good ads about bringing holistic healing to the mountains. They even staged a free yoga pop-up on Main Street. A reporter shoved a mic under my nose asking why I hated progress. I answered, "Progress that starts with theft isn't progress, it's plagiarism," then walked away. The line made the evening segment verbatim. Meanwhile, River, never one to waste a networking opportunity, pitched our saga to a documentary streamer. A crew arrived with battery packs and boom mics, promising they'd stay invisible. They weren't. But the cameras helped. Every county worker suddenly triple-checked their paperwork before stepping onto my gravel. The Board of Supervisors hearing landed on a sweltering August afternoon. The county auditorium reeked of AC struggling against packed bodies. Lodge developers in pastel polos, realtors in sharp blazers, retirees clutching Save Our Roads flyers. I spoke last. Maribel's slideshow projected the wildfire footage, the forged plat overlay, and a side-by-side of Lumina's public wellness corridor against the original Ridgeview scam. Gasps rippled when she highlighted identical typos carried over. Plagiarism, plain as quartz in sunlight. The county hearing felt less like politics and more like Judgment Day. I skipped legal jargon and spoke of stewardship, my great-uncle's wildlife logbooks, the scholarship sending kids into forestry, and the deer now bedding in a meadow greedy surveyors once scarred. Condemn my driveway, I finished, and you reward fraud. Protect it, and you remind every honest landowner this county still knows right from wrong. Chairwoman Danvers adjusted her glasses, read the vote, and the hall erupted. Condemnation denied, 5-0. Developers barked, neighbors cheered, camera flashes popped while I stepped into sunshine feeling 10 pounds lighter. Lumina Peaks threatened an appeal, so Maribel countersued for abuse of process. By Christmas, the company folded, selling its ridge parcels to a land trust that wrapped them in a conservation covenant. No resort, no condos, just a permanent wildlife corridor. Winter settled, and free of subpoenas, I spent evenings tuning my ham radio. Ember left jail quietly. Rumor says Idaho. Byron's parole board said no. Jade faced 3 wire fraud counts and 2 of money laundering, and the jury found him guilty on all charges. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. When one shoved a mic toward me, I repeated Deputy Martel's line, "You have no authority here." The clip went viral again, proof the internet loves a comeback, then faded into archive as headlines moved on. A month later, the documentary crew shot their epilogue. Sunrise over recovering pines. Fawns nibbling shoots where dozers once idled. Asked what lesson people should learn, I said, property rights are promises between past and future. They nodded and left. Spring brought another invitation from Danvers, testify at the State House. Lawmakers closed the loophole that let forged plats slide through. Certified notice to every owner, escrowed fines, personal liability for forged signatures. I parked my dusty truck among glossy sedans and told the committee how one rubber stamp clerk almost burned a mountain twice. The bill sailed through and the governor signed. June delivered the final twist. A courier handed me a linen envelope containing a formal apology and a $50,000 cashier's check. Jade, now inmate 8621304, had directed the money to my great-uncle's scholarship to nurture the hills he once tried to exploit. Maribel confirmed the funds were clean. I deposited them gladly. River joked we should rename the award the Enemies to Allies Forestry Grant. I vetoed but laughed anyway. Evenings now find me on the porch with coffee and a sky full of satellites. The solar array hums, the meadow glows with fireflies, and the only gates left are in stories I tell rookies Deputy Martell brings for training. Marcus flies drones each season, recording tree regrowth. Whoever guesses which plot hits 10 feet first buys cider. Sometimes a Ridgeview neighbor hikes up with homemade bread and tentative gratitude. I remind them we're tenants on a long lease and the mountain will outlive us all. Still, it feels good that the ridge they see today is greener because stubborn people refuse to stand down. Under the new statute, the county clerk now posts every proposed plat online for public review, a tiny procedural shift that will save untold headaches. I like to think it's a small monument to a loud, stubborn mountain cabin. The hawks still circle overhead, keeping silent watch over the ridge and reminding me persistence pays. Friends, thank you. See you soon.